This podcast is sponsored by Camera Museum of London and Tang Cigars of 44 Museum Street, London. Welcome to a Fish Out of Water podcast. This is your host, Richard Lipman. Today, we're interviewing Eric Wallin. This is part two of this podcast. I'm wondering whether you could kindly, with the instrument, talk us through pitch correction. That's a very important point. Is there any way you can demonstrate that whilst talking about it with your instrument?
Sure. So like I said, pitch quantization.
Is there any way you could sort of demonstrate it, like show it so we can listen and hear the difference with and without?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So this is with pitch correction. And what I'll do is I'll try to stay between two notes. Okay. Here it kind of pulling one way.
Maybe at this point we might want to put original sound for musicians.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm trying to stay between two notes.
Yes.
So you can hear it kind of going one way and going the other.
Yeah.
So it's trying to correct the pitch. And it's set rather slow. And this is using the center note modulation so that the closer I am to the center of a note, the faster it corrects. And so I can play things that you can actually use it as part of your playing technique then, because as long as you get close to the middle of the note, it'll pull you there pretty quickly. So like, when I change notes quickly, it pulls me to the center of the note pretty quickly. So I can play kind of sloppy, and the pitch correction is correcting.
In other words, the pitch correction is making it easy for you to change notes.
Yes, yeah. It makes it easy to pop kind of from one note to the next, and not have the dexterity that would normally be required, particularly with a very tight pitch field. You see people doing these microscopic movements with their fingers when they're playing theremin. It's quite difficult.
So those microscopic movements are notes that they're playing precisely.
Yeah, and they're often using certain fingering techniques, like moving like individual little knuckles and things like that to
I've seen that.
Yeah. Some people play just open-handed, or that's kind of I just play very floppy and relaxed. But everybody that I've talked to seems to go through an evolution of technique. They try this, they try that, and they finally settle on some kind of hybrid of whatever. Very often they end up doing very much like what Carolina Ike teaches.
I see. And what does she teach exactly?
She has like an entire like a theory series, I think. I haven't seen it, but she's taught just about everybody one way or another. So is like Lydia Keviness also taught just about everybody. And Carolina was one of Lydia's students, actually, when she was a child. Lydia's
going to be on the podcast.
Oh, great.
I interviewed her about a few weeks ago.
Yeah. She's really nice. And George Pavlov is her husband, and he designed the T-Bucks that Lydia plays.
It sounded very good as well.
Yeah.
What was his reaction on your invention?
He seemed impressed with it. He was very impressed with my manual. It has a rather extensive manual. So that goes into every little detail. So,
can you show us the finger techniques, the hand techniques?
I don't really use them, so I can't. All I do is I sometimes I hinge my fingers, sometimes I hinge my wrist. Kind of depends on what I'm doing, but it's not real intentional. A lot of fingering techniques are extremely intentional, they're like, do this to get an octave. That's what I see a lot. And
What's
then there's like
what's an octave?
12 notes, like from C to C.
Okay. Is there any way of playing sort of African or Middle Eastern music with the theremin?
I guess you could. I mean, it's if you're talking about like microtonal or a different.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the pitch correction and the tuner are set up for Western, 12 notes per octave, 12 half steps. So I guess you'd have to maybe not look at the tuner if you were dividing up the octave some other way and not use pitch correction.
Interesting.
Yeah. One thing about pitch correction too is you have to have a absolute reference of pitch to be able to use it, and I think that's kind of why it doesn't end up in theremins, because unless you have something very interactive like the tuner here, or unless you're playing a drone or accompaniment or something that keeps you on pitch, you're going to drift probably off of pitch. Most times when you play a cappella on theremin, you end up drifting. And then the pitch correction will end up fighting you because you're not, staying at concert pitch.
Eric, can we hear some more highly unusual sounds and presets that we haven't heard before, please?
Sure. This is a female hum, and this is the last of the humans that'll do. So. Okay, darn it. Female hums are fun to play.
Interesting.
So here's one you'll probably recognize. War of the Worlds. Let's see. Whistler. You could do, let's see. You can do fairly complex bells when you have. So this is a elephant bell. So I've got a.
Wow, it's quite precise.
And it has damping too, so you can set a damping point, and it damps the envelope generator and all the filters.
That's incredible. Did you record the instruments in order to get that sound?
Well, I record them, and then I analyze their spectra and their envelopes and things like that, so that I can set the resonant filters in the D-Lev. So it's rather an involved process coming up with a preset very often. Percussive things are easy, like this is a wine glass. And I can control the interbeating with my pitch hand here.
Wow.
And then it also has damping.
That's impressive. What about visuals? Can this interact with visuals? Like Jean-Michel Jarre's Fire, right? So a note will represent a different visual, on a stage. Is that
probably
possible?
Could. I mean, you could. It has MIDI out, so the MIDI, you could probably use that to control various displays, because it would tell you what note it's playing. The MIDI implementation on this is actually fairly complete. It actually gives you note on, which a lot of theremins don't do. So, sometimes it's difficult to interface the theremin with a digital synthesizer. In this case, it gives you note on, velocity, It also controls a CC, and you can do it with either 7 or 14 bits. And you can set the pitch bend to, I don't know, 12 octaves or something. So you never really encounter a retrigger while you're playing. So it's a very full-featured MIDI implementation, but it's only MIDI out. You can't MIDI into it.
I'm going to connect you to, I think someone from a band called Egg, or it's a sort of electronic music, and they asked me that question a few nights ago. So I think you're the man to connect them with this. There's one thing. You're going to show more. I'm just wondering whether, you know, how does that, you know, that, you know, on Logic and all those dials or whatever you call them, you can change the pitch with the keyboards, and you got something called the wave, which you can do something like that as well. How does your instrument differentiate from all of those possibilities today?
Well, there are modulation into the filters, the center frequencies of the filter. You can control the modulation of the volume and the pitch for all of the filters. So that's how you end up with like this. This is a articulated formats of human vocals.
Oh my God, I'm speaking to E.T. here.
Here's one that somebody else designed, and people like it. So that's rather extreme modulation of the.
Interesting. Can you create a language through that?
I don't think so. There isn't that much articulation kind of going on. You know, it's like one vowel, or you can change the vowel somewhat with the volume, or with the pitch, or both. But yeah, it's not quite there. So a couple more weird ones, I guess. There are a lot of weird presets. An elephant, supposedly. Here's sheep, many barnyard animals in here. Here's a cow.
This is the
Don't ask me why.
Animals, humans, electronic, sci-fi effects.
Here's a train. One thing that's cool is like when you put a decay on noise, it sounds very reverby. It's something I've noticed anyway. And you've got to do
that's nice.
You've got to do the train whistle. There's car horns. Somebody sent me a foghorn that they really wanted. This is a real foghorn. You know, it's like.
That sounds really good. How did you get to record a foghorn?
You just analyze the spectra and you set the filters.
How do you analyze the spectra?
I use various software to do that. Audacity has a spectral kind of view, and also I can't remember the name of the other piece of software, but it's pretty nice. You pull in a sample and it'll kind of show where the resonances are. When you're doing humans, you have to have a sample that, you know, it's like you have to cover like a lot of range with your vocal cords to kind of see where the resonances are. And then the resonances actually change kind of depending on the note you're singing, so it's all rather complex. Violins are tough too. You know, you really need a sliding kind of finger sliding up a string while they're playing it to kind of capture where the resonance peaks are.
So did you have to hire a classical musician to record them playing on all the notes, or the?
No, there's actually I can't remember the university, but they have sound samples, high quality sound
Yeah,
samples
Vienna.
online.
I think there's a Vienna symphony orchestra VSTs or something like that out
It's
there.
a this is a college, and
Oh, this is
they
another
have
one.
like an anechoic chamber, and they actually put like microphones all over the place in like a sphere for some of the more exotic sampling. I don't use anything nearly that complex, but they were good for like horns, violins. I think I got my this is a triangle. I think I got a triangle them from them. Anyway, they've been, and
That is.
and like there's I have a bunch of Tibetan bowls.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah, like 190. And like you
Okay.
can kind of
Sounds
rub the
great.
bowl, and so the closer you get to it, the more you're kind of like rubbing the outside, and then of course damping. You control the interbeating with the pitch hand. So I've got a million of those because they're and there was this bowl company, and they posted like all these samples of these bowls that you can buy. So really high quality samples. You can sit there and analyze them and come up with a.
Once you've analyzed it, then what happens?
Well, then I try to make the synthesizer make the same sound.
Oh, I see. So you got to work with a separate synthesizer to connect it to this
No.
program.
It's the synthesizer that's in the D-Lev.
Ah,
Um,
okay.
yeah. So I look and I go, oh, there's a resonance, at 1,000 hertz and 1,200 hertz and something. So I use the knobs here to set the resonance points, and then and I have a spreadsheet too that helps me with things that are more percussive.
Can users actually do that? I mean, insert a sound
It's
and
not
mhm.
um, it's not that complex of a synthesizer. I mean, are you familiar with like the Haken Continuum?
I may have heard it. I don't know much
It's
about
a
it.
Yeah, it's like a neoprene kind of linear thing that you play with your fingers, and it has you can move in one axis to do the modulation, and
Right.
then the pitch is this way. So it has very similar pitch correction
Hmm.
that the D-Lev has. But anyway, the synthesizer in there is the Egan matrix. And that's like a kitchen sink. It's like every synthesis method that you can imagine is like dumped into that thing. It's just amazing. And then it has a huge modulation matrix that you can manipulate. So
Can,
that's like that'd be like a lot to come up to speed on. This is a very very simple
yeah. When you
synthesizer.
talk about modulation, what's modulation for the
It's
average
like
listener?
it's like when you're moving your volume hand around, you can actually use that level inside the synthesizer to adjust parameters, and you can use the volume to control the harmonic content, the level of harmonic content. So like when you sing, or just most acoustic sound sources get brighter the louder they are, so that you probably want to dial up some of the volume modulation to on the oscillator to make it brighter when you're playing it louder. Just kind of makes it sound more natural. I mean,
Wow.
everything does it. Human vocals do it. Trumpets do it. Trumpets get kind of blary when you play them loud. Violins get harsher, the louder you play them. So it's just a harmonic content modulation.
Have you ever gotten a call from Korg? With regards to licensing your instrument?
No, I haven't gotten any inquiries like that. It's the beauty part of the theremin is it's such a niche. It's such a niche that in the music industry itself, it's kind of weird that it's not bigger than it actually is for the influence that it has. You can get to know world class musicians, and they're just it's not this entire thing that's completely away from everybody, and on high it's very approachable because it's not that huge, and the
Right.
theremin community is really small. So
Now, how small is small?
I don't know. I mean,
in terms of numbers?
well, I mean, how many household names are there with theremin players among theremin
Mm.
players?
I think
Maybe 20. You know that. I mean,
20, 20 out of 25,000 or something like that.
yeah, maybe it's just thousands that play the theremin. I don't know. I mean,
Mm.
people that play it seriously
Mm. Mm.
and concertize,
Mm.
I would think that's kind of a handful,
Yes.
just of people, not that many. So it's that. So the beauty of the theremin it, world is that it's small and there's no money to be made really. I mean, it kind of keeps the big guys out and it lets people sort of dabble and like I'm doing here without a lot of competition. Not that I'm afraid of competition or anything. I think it's wonderful when there's more options, but it keeps also keep it in a bad way too. You know, it does keep the big guys out, and then you know
Mm.
the instrument can kind of stagnate technologically. So one thing I'm trying to do is kind of pull the theremin into the 21st century and deal with the fields and maybe make it easier to play because it's you know like I said notoriously difficult to play an analog theremin.
What of the future?
Well, I would like to have people think about plates rather than rods because rods make more sense in an analog and they make less sense in a digital. I think they're
100%.
softer targets for your hands. You know, when I'm watching the tuner, I can't really pay super close attention to where my hands are. So to have a softer target for both of my hands, I think that's a good thing. I think an interactive tuner is it's absolutely integral to making it easier to play, giving you some kind of reference to what pitch you're playing. I think pitch correction really helps a lot too.
Mm.
And I think shaping the volume field and relaxing the pitch field are very crucial to making it a much easier to play instrument. But you know, you're up
Mm.
against
Right.
it's trying to change an instrument like fundamentally you're really up against a lot of analog expectation. You know,
Mm.
everybody's learned on an analog, so you know how on earth do you kind of introduce kind of fundamental changes? But you know it's gotten a pretty good response. I mean you can set it up like an analog, and most
I see.
people do. They set it up for a tight pitch field and I use a
Can you
reverse
show
volume
us?
field.
Can you show us that?
Well, I don't know if there's
Analog.
really much to look. Well, one thing
I
that they
mean,
do,
hear
one
it
thing
so
that
we can hear it.
sure. Yeah. There are also what I call profiles, system profiles, 6 of them.
Hmm.
So if you live with 5 other people and they all play theremin, you can set it up the way you like it, and then you can
That's quite
just
clever.
bring it
Right.
back, recall your setup. So so most people play. Let me see. Let me okay. Most people play. You know, analogs are set up this way to play louder the farther you get away from the volume antenna. And to me, that just felt like really weird and kind of was one more reason that I had found difficulty kind of getting into the theremin. Because I play it so that the closer is louder. I mean, like, if the pitch goes up when your hand goes near the pitch antenna, why isn't the volume going up when your hand gets near the volume antenna? It's because of the physics of the field and what they're trying to do with the volume field. They're trying to get like a very fast transition. They're trying to let you do attacks and things like that by putting your hand in a loop and pulling it out. So, but when you're playing a more percussive preset, then you're playing a drum on the ceiling rather than a drum down here. So yeah, I mean there's this thing too. If you look at if you watch thereminists play, there's this thing that they do when they change notes. It's like they stab down and then they kind of release slowly. They stab down and they release slowly, and that kind of helps them shape and it gives it kind of an operatic singer kind of envelope. So that's a little harder to do when you reverse the volume field, when you make it closer is louder. But that's about the only thing I can think of, because like if I leave this alone, you know, you leave any theremin alone and it makes noise. So you see people constantly babysitting the volume antenna. It's
Yeah.
a dangerous thing I think to have on stage that an
Yeah.
instrument that's going to make noise when you leave it alone. You know,
Mm.
But if you
Well, you,
reverse the
you,
volume,
you
if you
can
go,
you can press the mute button, right?
you can,
There is.
you can, yeah, yeah. There's a mute on this, so, and you can have a mute foot switch if you want, or you know, that sort of thing. So,
Tell
so
me, I
it's.
mean, you tried the Moog Etherwave.
Mhm.
How do you find the authenticity of the Moog Etherwave to the original instrument?
I've never played like an RCA. If you mean like the original Theremins,
Yeah, I mean the
Theremin?
Lev Theremin's instrument. RCA was a kind of copy of his, but not quite
Right. Yeah. I mean,
perfect.
he had his own stuff, but he licensed uh, his design to RCA.
Right.
So so those are out there. I've never played one. I've never played a theremin, an RCA theremin, so I'm not really sure.
What?
I have played
Hmm,
like the you know Bob Moog stuff. I've
right.
you know
The
like
Etherwave.
The
Right.
Etherwave Pro, the Melodia a little bit. So
Clarinets.
I'm sorry,
Clarinets.
the Clairvox.
Clarivox. Sorry,
Yeah.
Clarivox. Are there
Uh,
differences between the sound and what you can do with each one?
Yeah, I mean, with analogs, you're kind of stuck with a certain kind of timbre or variations. Um, so, like the ether wave, I'm not a real fan of its timbres that you can get out of it. I've kind of heard this from other people too. Not to, you know, rag on the instrument or anything. It's a well-made theremin. There are thousands of them out there, and
Hmm. Uh-huh.
it's a good design. Bob knew what he was doing. You know, you really have to, I think, play it somewhat to be able to design these things.
Yeah.
And I've, you know, become all right on it. You know, here and there,
But
just having
what
to.
about the Clarivox? How does that change in terms of the sound and what you can do with it when the
Well,
pro version?
well, the Clarivox, which is it was like a limited edition sort of thing, and they're not making it anymore. In
Mm.
fact, the Mo Corporation is kind of gone, sort of. And, you know, it was snatched up by a conglomerate that kind of collects, um, you know. So they've stopped making Etherwave, which they actually updated the Etherwave. I worked on one about a year ago, and so the inside was much more modern. It had a coupling control that was kind of nice. The price was double, but but it was pretty much the same old instrument in terms of the circuitry. But even that's
Mm.
gone. So I
Right.
think your only option now, I think, from Moog Music is the Theremin.
Yeah.
So
And the pro version of the
Etherwave.
Moog. Um,
The Pro I played a little bit, and that was Bob's last design, and it you know has a lot going for it. I think the ergonomics of it I'm not real happy with. You know, it's got that rod kind of that comes out, and the controls kind of face your belly rather than you know or up where you can kind of see them. So I have a lot of ergonomic kind of
I see. I see.
ideas.
What about the Clarivox? Is that a bit easier to play?
It's I don't know. It's much like the Pro, I guess. It has the arm and the pitch rod.
Mm.
Um, there are, it's kind of plagued with um, everybody I talk to that owns one. It seems like maybe 80% of the people are having some kind of issue with it. So
Why?
it's
What? What
it
issue?
software issues.
Oh God.
The librarian's gone for Windows. You can't get that anymore. And there are certain things that you have to be like the MIDI. I think you have to turn that on in the software. We're
Oh
using the
really?
librarian, and that's kind of gone.
Oh well. What if you use a Mac?
Yeah, I think the editor's still around for the Mac.
Oh, so it
So
could be gone in 10 years if the software doesn't work with it or doesn't
well, I
connect.
mean, you'll still be able to play it, I guess, but maybe you won't be able to turn on the MIDI. Well, you know, there are MIDI codes and stuff, so I guess somebody could come up with an editor that's open source or something like that if they knew, you know, all the locations inside of it that you would access for a CC via CC or whatever.
And yours, how future proof is yours?
Well, the entire thing is open source, even including the 3D printed sources. The manual is open source. The librarian is open source, and it's written in the Go language, which is very good for cross-compiling. So the librarian will run on Windows, Mac M1, 2, 3, Raspberry Pi, Linux. It's kind of a bare bones console application, which I think a lot of people aren't real up on. They don't bring up the console all the time,
Right.
but that's one way to kind of keep it simple and cross-platform.
You were talking about the volume and moving up and down. Is that switchable?
Yes.
Okay, so it's fully flexible. Can you
Yeah,
do
yeah.
that with the Theremin?
I don't know. You might be able to when you do the calibration.
Now that's another thing with the calibration. Is yours, does it calibrate automatically, or do you need to sort of feel it in when you're in front of the
Well,
instrument?
the auto calibration is just standing at it and pressing a button and waiting like a second or two.
Oh, that's
Um,
fantastic.
but I mean, there's more to setting up the fields. You
Is it?
have to set them up kind of to begin with for the auto calibration to bring you back to that point. So there's sensitivity, obviously, like, is this an octave or is this only four half steps or what is this, right? And then there's also the knob thing that you normally have on a theremin, which is the far field. Is it expanded or contracted in relation to the near field? So you have that knob that it's the knob that's on all theremins. So that's on the D-Lev. And then the D-Lev also has a where is the note located in the pitch field. So you can move the entire field around.
Any
You know.
chance of just switching off the original sound for musicians, just so we
Okay. Yes.
cut out, yeah, the noise.
So
Yeah,
sorry. So
fantastic.
sorry. So sorry.
Don't worry.
Yeah. So you've got like three basic controls for each
Much
field.
better. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the price of one of these, or is it depend on the year of manufacturing?
The raw materials that go into it are, I guess, down to about $200 now. And
That's not right.
so the kits I've been selling for 500 plus postage, and that covers waste, promo units, that sort of thing, tooling. So, but it's just a kit. I mean, it's fully functional. You can pull it out of the box and start playing it, but you've got to, make your own pretty enclosure for it.
You got to make an enclosure for it. Are there enclosures that come with it, or that could be that you recommend?
No, nobody's really making enclosures.
Mm.
One guy that was working with me, Roger Hess, who lives in Minnesota, has built several of what we call the P3, and it's a really pretty, more of a ether wave angled kind of look with a tuner on it and the control unit and beautiful antennas. And so Rob Schwimmer has a couple of those. Karitsa Ilyeni has a couple. Um, Somebody else has one. And then Carolina Ike was involved with a project that they actually bought a couple of my theremins and they built these beautiful cases. So the one that you see that she's playing, the D-Lev that she's playing, was done by that group. So, but I don't think anybody has any plans to mass produce cabinetry, unfortunately, at this point. So,
Fantastic.
but it's I've one of the ones that I've done and others have done is buying like a wine box, a wine that you put like three wine bottles in, and it's made out of wood, and you give it to somebody as a gift or whatever. That makes a really nice enclosure for rods or for plates, or like mine right here. I'm going to probably make something out of paper mache or something because the shape is so complex. And one thing too is like
Yeah.
when you're relying only on muscle memory for these things, you really want the setup to be extremely repeatable. So, you could have your plates on little gimbals or rods or something like that. And then every time you want to move it somewhere, you'd fold it all up and undo it or something. But unless it comes back to exactly the same spot every time, that can throw you off. So I'm going to probably just put this all in one box of some sort.
Yes.
And keep it all at this angle, at this height. You know, even slight height changes can kind of throw you off. So, or maybe I'm just extra sensitive. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very sensitive instrument. Fantastic.
But there's so much you can do with ergonomics, I think, with the instrument.
If your instrument were to be played in space, what tune would you like to hear?
Probably the Star Trek theme.
If it weren't a tune you'd already heard, what would it be?
I don't know. It's been played at Burning Man.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Is it possible to play your instrument in the dark?
Yes. Yeah. Because the tuner is, you can adjust the brightness of the tuner and the LCD so it's not blinding you so much. I find it easier to play in daylight though, because it's just kind of easier to see the pattern of the tuner, so that it's easier to kind of tell where you are. So,
right. Absolutely.
You know, a lot of people when they play analog theremin, they close their eyes, so it's hard for them to adjust to playing, looking at a tuner. So, you know, there are a lot of analog kind of things that are a little problematic when you have, you know, a tuner, and so.
Finally, Eric, thank you very much. Do you have any philosophies of life?
Well, I don't know. Be kind.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Thank you, Richard.
This podcast is sponsored by Camera Museum of London and Tang Cigars of 44 Museum Street, London. Thank you for listening to a Fish Out of Water podcast. This is your host, Richard Lipman. Should you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please get in touch.